Hello, everybody. Welcome into Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today is Tuesday, December 3rd. We have a big show for you. Of course, every Tuesday during the NFL season, we continue with our NFL power rankings. We'll start off with that 32-17 and 16-1 as always, as well as we take a look at our winners and losers from another chaotic week in the NFL. Week 13 is in the books, and as we prepare for Week 14, it's the final weeks before playoffs in a lot of leagues in fantasy football, we take a look at a couple streaming options as it's the last week of buys, and there's 6 teams on buys. We'll take a look at a couple guys you could target if you need just a hole to fill or someone to pick up a flyer for the future. But before we get into any of that, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you got to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you are on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those two things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Tuesday, December 3rd. But like I was saying, we are going to start off our show as we do every single Tuesday with the NFL Power Rankings. And we're going to start off right away at number 32. It's the New York Giants. This is a team that currently holds the number 1 overall pick. They've been teetering near the bottom for a while, and right now everything is just falling off for them right now. The Giants are a team that has, or had, I should say, some positives on them. Dexter Lawrence, for one, now goes down with injury. He's out for the rest of the season. Promising rookie tight end Theo Johnson, also on the IR, done for the year with injury. We have Drew Lock / Tommy DeVito at starting quarterback. The Giants are a mess right now of an organization. Everything kind of that could have gone wrong has gone wrong for them this season, and they are the worst team in the league at number 32. At 31, it's the Jacksonville Jaguars, and this is one that I could very easily have at number 32. The reason I have them up is because when Trevor Lawrence is in the game, they are a better football team. They have at least a little bit more promise because they have a competent starting quarterback that the Giants just don't have on their roster right now. That's the biggest difference between them, but still very much in the basement bottom of the league right now are the Jacksonville Jaguars. At number 30, that's going to be the Las Vegas Raiders. They almost escaped with a win against the Chiefs on Black Friday. A weird call with the officials there. Was a false start, got called as an illegal formation, ended up losing them the game there. Still, this is a Raiders team that's competing for the first overall pick. They, unlike the Giants again at the bottom, have some promise over there. Brock Bowers putting together a Rookie of the Year campaign for himself. A solid body of work for him, looking to break the all-time rookie reception record, the all-time rookie yards record, trying to break all of those records right now. He is on pace for breaking some of those records that Puka did last season. Raiders, outside of him, kind of a mess. Maybe we saw a little bit of promise with Aiden O'Connell under center last week, but still there's not too much to like about this Raiders team. They're going to get a top 3 pick in the NFL draft this year, but they have Brock Bowers, so they got a little bit to work with there at number 30. The Titans at 29. This is a team that I think is actually a lot closer than a lot of the other teams that we've gone over so far. The Titans have an interesting decision to make at quarterback with Will Levis. Is he going to be the answer going forward? It's a toss-up. I'm not sure if he is, but also that's not the most pressing issue right now. The defense had been pretty good. They were the number 3 defense in the league heading into last weekend before getting absolutely thumped by the Commanders. That's probably going to go down, but still a solid defense when they get fully healthy. This is a Titans team that has a lot of pieces. They just need to find a way to get it to fit together. They've gotten flipped upside down in the wrong spot, but the puzzle is starting to come together, and I think you can see that for the Titans right now. At 28, it's the Jets. This is a team that just has its wheels falling off, right? Aaron Rodgers, I'm not sure if he has it anymore. He's come out there, and now there's talks of him being benched. I don't know if that's the right move for the Jets, who, even with him, are still losing games. The locker room is already bought out enough. It's just time to play out the season for the Jets and decide from there. Aaron Rodgers has talked about potentially retiring for about the fourth or fifth offseason in a row. We'll see what happens. I doubt he's a New York Jet after this season. Maybe he completes the Favre arc and goes back to Minnesota. But really, anything could happen with the New York Jets and Aaron Rodgers at this point. It's just an abysmal season. They're at 28. 27, it's the Cowboys. How about 2 straight wins for them? 2 straight division wins for them. They get the big win at home on Thanksgiving. Of course, that snaps their brutal home record. They had lost all 5 of their home games heading into that. Now they finally get a win. They had trailed by 20 points in 6 straight home games going back to the playoffs. They get rid of that curse right there. The Cowboys are playing much better defensively ever since Micah Parsons got back. The offense still is not really there. We saw CeeDee Lamb struggle with drops last game. It's still a Cowboys team that isn't good enough. But as long as they feast on the weaker teams on their schedule, they will still find a way to maybe be competitive in the NFC. Don't really see a way that they make it in, though. Still, Cowboys, 2 straight wins, pretty impressive. Way to get a little bit momentum for yourselves. They're at 27. 26 is the Patriots. I think they probably should have won that game against the Colts. Anthony Richardson pulled out his Anthony Richardson magic at the end, and he did his thing. Drake May continues to play really, really good. I cannot wait for when he has a surrounding cast with him, when he has a team that will be able to support him, and he's not just throwing to a bunch of nobodies. The defense also needs to step up a little bit, but impressive game from Drake May and the Patriots. They stayed in it until the very end. They got a chance. They had a 68-yard field goal go up. I love that decision. I thought, honestly, was a good one. Joey Sly has quite the leg. He almost made it. He was online just a little bit short. Would have been a crazy way to end that game. Patriots up 3 spots to 26. 25, it's the Colts. They get that win against the Patriots. Anthony Richardson goes out, has another solid game. It wasn't one of his amazing games, but he did his job. Touchdown on the ground, touchdown through the air, led a game-winning drive, and that's the most important thing, right? He is getting out there, and even though he's making a couple of mistakes, he threw 2 interceptions in this game. He corrected them. He came out when he needed to, and in clutch time was able to lead the Colts down the field, not just with his arm, but with his legs. He converted on that 2-point try. That was gutsy. I liked the call there. Indianapolis Colts are a fun team, and they can still find a way to sneak into the playoffs if they win out against a weaker schedule. Colts are at 25. The Bears here at 24, and on here you have a picture of former head coach, now Matt Eberflus, right? This is an offense that is just getting better. The defense continues to play good football. They've kind of started to dwindle a little bit of late, but the offense has gotten better ever since they fired Shane Waldron. They probably should have won at least 2 or 3 of these 6 straight games that they have lost now. Can't go back and change history. It is what it is, but this is a Bears team that is not as bad as their record states. They're still near the bottom of the league, don't get me wrong, but they're near the top of the bad. I'd say they're in the top tier of bad teams. Still need a lot of work to go. It's not Caleb Williams' fault, and they're here at 24. 23 goes to the Panthers. You get to the best of the worst, and here it is. Bryce Young has come out of the woodwork ever since being benched, and he has played phenomenal football. He and the Carolina Panthers, I think, should have won that game. This catch right here from Adam Thielen, that he got a knee down, he had possession of the ball. They called that an incomplete pass. Would have been a touchdown, would have won the game for them. Carolina Panthers should have won even without that. There were 2 missed field goals by the most accurate kicker in the history of the NFL, Eddie Pinheiro. Panthers are a much, much better squad, and I think Bryce Young has given himself more time under Dave Canales. That's going to be a fun team in the future. They should have won that game. This is a touchdown. Carolina Panthers at 23. At 22, we have the Falcons. You want to talk about a disappointment of a team, it's these Atlanta Falcons. Their defense finally puts up a good performance. They have not put together a good performance in a very, very long time. Then Kirk Cousins goes out there and he throws 4 interceptions. They cannot catch a break. There is not a single time this season where they have had everything go right for them in a game. They have yet to have a fully healthy, fully consistent game from both sides of the ball. And the Atlanta Falcons, while they're still in first place in their division, are really in danger of missing the playoffs now, tied with the Bucs at 6-6 at the top. They have the tiebreaker after sweeping the season series, and that's a huge thing for the Falcons, but they need to get it together now, and they need to get it together quick. Maybe it's time for Michael Penix. Cleveland Browns at 21. We saw the most Jameis Winston game possible. That was a treat, right? Jameis Winston did his thing. 497 yards, 4 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. He did everything you need him to do. 2 pick sixes. That is the perfect, quintessential Jameis Winston game, and it was peak cinema. That is what you want to see. Now, if you're a Browns fan, maybe not. It was entertaining, it was fun to watch, but it's not winning football. And that's why Jameis Winston, in the grand scheme of things, is a career backup. He's going to be a guy that is fun to have on a team, fun to watch when he's not on your team, but you see the mistakes he made. He was leading a drive to get them back within 1 possession, throws a really awful interception at the goal line. 2 pick sixes to go along with that. This is just a Jameis Winston team that, you're going to be chaos. It's going to be chaos incarnate. You don't know what's going to happen. You might drop 30 points on one of the best defenses in the league, but then they'll drop 40 on your head as well. This is the opposite of what I thought would happen on Monday Night Football. It was a great time, but the Cleveland Browns still don't really have the answer. They're at 21. The Saints at 20, they lose a second game, this time to the Rams. They lose Taysom Hill as well, but they're showing some stuff. They're looking better than they were when they're looking better. They're looking a lot better now, a lot more competent since they fired their head coach, right? Alvin Kamara is starting to play better football. The defense is playing a little bit better. This is just a team that's not quite going to have the juice to make any real noise in the NFL. They just might play spoiler to a couple teams in their division. They're at number 20. At 19, we have the Cincinnati Bengals. I feel so bad for Joe Burrow right now. Joe Burrow is doing everything in his power to win football games. He's going out there dropping 38 points and losing to a Pittsburgh Steelers team that shouldn't have been able to put 40 up on you. That defense is atrocious. He is doing everything he can for this team. That they have put up 33 points or more in 6 games this season. They have lost 4 of them. That's the most in NFL history. 38 points. They've put it up twice. They've lost 2 of them. That's the most in NFL history. This is just a brutal, brutal stretch for that Cincinnati Bengals defense, and they need to start over right now. I don't know how they're going to do it, but they cannot roll into next year with the defense being the same. It's just malpractice over there. At 18, it's the Niners. Talk about a fall from grace. We talk about injuries really hitting them hard. Really, they have been one of the bigger storylines of the entire NFL year. Not just this season, but the offseason as well. If you go back to the whole Brandon Ayuk saga, he gets hurt. Now you lose your top 2 running backs. You're down to rookie Isaac Guerendo. This is a team that just has had everything go wrong for them. It's a mess. This is a great team. They're still in the race for their division because of how messed up the division is right now. But the San Francisco 49ers just seemingly don't have any juice left this season. And I think after that snow game, it's just done for them. I'm out on the Niners now. I thought they still had a chance to win the division, but unless they can turn something around quickly, I'm just about out on the San Francisco 49ers for the rest of the year. And at number 17, it's the Rams. They get another win. Puka Nacua continues to do his thing. That offense is getting better. The defense continues to step up. I just need them to beat good teams. They have yet to put a huge performance together against a really good team this season. They're still in the division hunt right now, much like the 49ers. They're in a better spot than the Niners, though. We will see what happens. The Rams at 17. But we're going to take a quick break here. When we come back, we turn our attention to the top half of the NFL. Ranks 16-1 coming up next here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around, I feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient. Hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing. Sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown. Get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the news it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today is Tuesday, December 3rd. If you are just tuning in, we just finished going over the first half of the NFL Power Rankings, 32-17. In this segment, we finish up 16-1 coming up in just a second. But before we do, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you are on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those two things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Tuesday, December 3rd. But like I was saying, we are going to finish up our NFL power rankings here, getting into the top half of the league. At number 16, it's the Arizona Cardinals. A tough break for them. It really is. This is a Cardinals team that probably should have won that game against the Minnesota Vikings. They miss a field goal or two. They have an interesting decision to kick the field goal instead of going for it to go up 6 as opposed to potentially going up 10. It's one of those decisions that you just kind of have to live with. I don't hate it. I also don't love it. I probably would have gone for it in that situation. It's very similar, as people have been pointing out, to the situation with the Eagles in week 2 against the Falcons when they did the exact same thing. Same result occurred. We take a look at how it has turned out for the Cardinals and the Eagles, and probably a better idea just to go for it there. Of course, hindsight is 2020. That's how we live. But the Arizona Cardinals are a team that their defense has been playing incredible, really. The offense has just been unable to push in touchdowns. They had so many opportunities in that game where they settled for field goals, and points are important. You have to score points. But in a game like that, kind of a must-win for your division after you fell a little bit behind, losing to the Seahawks last week, they needed that win, and they probably should have gotten it. The Arizona Cardinals, still a good team, still top half of the league, but they're down here at 16. At number 15, we have those Seattle Seahawks. That defense continues to play great football. The offense I'm a little bit concerned about, but you had a pick 6 from Leonard Williams. They got pressure on the quarterback, and it's the Jets, so I'm not going to take too much from it, but it's very impressive to see that defense continue to play good football. That's the most important thing. As long as the defense can do what they need to do, as long as the defense can keep them in the game, they are going to be a very, very dangerous team, and we are seeing the defense get back to where it was at the beginning of the season and start to play good football again. Seahawks at 15. At 14, we have the Dolphins, and I know the Dolphins just lost a brutal game to the Packers, and I know the narrative of they can't win in the cold. It seems to be proven true. I'm well aware. I also know that the Seahawks took care of business against the Dolphins in week 3. Tua wasn't on that team. There were some flashes in that game. There were some dropped passes. Tua missed his receivers. They're not going to be playing in the cold all the time. Now, this is a concern for the playoffs, but I still think this is a Dolphins team that engineered a near comeback in the cold. If they had decided, I think, to run the ball a couple more times, maybe used a fullback or something at the goal line when they were down by 2 scores instead of throwing it twice on 3rd and 4th and goal and getting a sack to turn the ball over, this is a team that was still kind of in it at the end there. This is a Dolphins team that shows fight, that shows promise. The offense is explosive, as it has been since Tua came back, and it's not an easy game to play in the cold. I know they need to do better there, but this is a Dolphins team that I still do believe in at number 14. 13 is the Bucs. They escape with a win that they should not have had against a division opponent in the Carolina Panthers. Mike Evans is back. Bucky Irving has really stepped into a huge role in that offense, and he continues to play great. Baker Mayfield fighting through a couple of injuries, playing great football as well. They're getting just about everything they need, and they're staying competitive in every game. You'd like to see them blow out a couple opponents like the Panthers, especially with the way that that defense has been. They shouldn't have won that game, though. I still think the Bucs are a good team. They're the best team in that division by a country mile, I think. But I'm not sure if it's going to be enough to win. They do need to beat. They can't just tie. They need to beat the Falcons' record, which means they just need to be one game better than the Falcons from here on out. We'll see what happens, though. They're at number 13. At 12, it's the Houston Texans, and there is cause for concern on this team. They beat the Jacksonville Jaguars. They escape with a victory. Jaguars almost come back. Obviously, the big story coming out of this game is the hit on Jacksonville quarterback Trevor Lawrence by Azeez Al-Shaair. He gets suspended for 3 games. That's a huge blow to that defense. He's been a starter all season long. I still think this is a Houston team that's starting to figure it out. Ever since Nico Collins came back, it's looked like a different team. They've gotten the offense going a little bit. I'd like to see Tank Dell get a little more involved like he was down the stretch of last season. But this is a Texans team that is continuing to play good, right? The offensive line, still an issue, but I really do love the spot that they're in. And I think if you let them in the playoffs, they could be dangerous. They should have a lock to the playoffs, though. They should win their division. At 11, we have the Commanders. The Washington Commanders go out there and they drop 42 on the number 3 defense in the league. They run for 267 yards. They are great when the run game is going. When Brian Robinson can run like that, they are almost unbeatable. Jaden Daniels has a huge game. Terry McLaurin, another 2-touchdown performance. He has really stepped into the light this season ever since they got a real quarterback. Jaden Daniels, Rookie of the Year contender with Brock Bowers over there. The Washington Commanders, after a 3-game slump, are turning it around. And I know it's against the Titans, but the fact that they had that kind of offensive explosion shows me that he's healthy, Jaden Daniels, and he's back, and he's ready to cause some havoc around the NFL, and I cannot wait to see what happens. But getting into the top 10 here. The Minnesota Vikings are here at number 10. They drop 1 spot from last week. Still a good Vikings team, but I am a little concerned. Sam Darnold has not played as good as he did in the first couple of weeks. They went on and they got Daniel Jones. I think that's a great fit for the Vikings, but I'm still concerned about this team. The Cardinals were able to shut them down for most of that game. They're starting to find a little bit of a method to stop Justin Jefferson. I know it's kind of crazy to say that, and you go up against a good defense in the Arizona Cardinals, but the Minnesota Vikings going out there, not scoring a touchdown for the first half of football is very concerning. They kind of have this ability to kind of become a shell of themselves, not be able to convert once they get into field goal range, and that's going to come and bite them in the butt when they play some teams like the Lions, like the Packers, the rest of their division down the stretch, and some of these other top 10 teams. At number 9, we have the Chargers. A rough week for them, but their defense really stepped up. Their defense did a great job. Ladd McConkey had a huge game, but outside of him, nobody did. They still won the game. The loss of J.K. Dobbins is huge. You can see how much that affects them. They love to run the ball when they don't have their big rushing threat, and Gus Edwards is not cutting it right now. It's been an issue for the Chargers. Hopefully he gets healthy soon. He's on the IR, could be back for the playoffs. They just need to finish strong. They've got a couple of contenders. They're really fighting for that 7 seed. It's not going to be easy in the AFC to earn a spot in the playoffs, and the Chargers need to stay hot right now because they have plenty of teams right on their tail, including the number 8 Denver Broncos. The Denver Broncos get a huge win on Monday Night Football. Their defense did not play like it's typical. They got 2 touchdowns, 2 pick sixes there on Jameis Winston, but they gave up a lot of points. They had a cornerback that got absolutely burned for 235 yards by Jerry Jeudy in the best revenge game by a wide receiver in the history of the NFL. This is still a really good Denver Broncos team. Bo Nix showed up and he dropped 40 points. Not just him, the defense too, but the Broncos dropped 40 points on the Cleveland Browns' head, and Bo Nix looked amazing. He really did. He showed me a lot of the things that I was scared he wouldn't be able to do, throwing the ball deep over the middle. He hit all those plays perfectly. A huge game for Bo Nix. He goes out there. You can say he's in the Rookie of the Year race. I don't think he is, but I do understand he's a quarterback. He's the second best rookie quarterback right now. He is absolutely, I guess, technically in the race. I wouldn't put him in there. I'd put him at distant third behind Brock Bowers and Jaden Daniels. Regardless of that fact, they've seemed to have found the quarterback of their future, and that's huge for Sean Payton. 1-for-1 on drafting franchise quarterbacks, just continues to add to his resume as a great coach, a Hall of Fame coach. Denver Broncos at 8. Number 7, we have the Packers. I dropped them just one spot after this last week. I was more impressed by one team ahead of them, so they fell a spot to number 7. This is a Packers squad that got a big win against the Dolphins on Thanksgiving, right? A game that I did not think they were going to win. I thought the Dolphins would find a way to take that one in the cold, but they defended their house. They defended their turf. They went out there. Jordan Love played a good game of football. Jaden Reed is electric to watch. Another 2 touchdowns for him in that one. Josh Jacobs has really exploded. He's now the 3rd leading rusher in the NFL. This is a Packers team that I thought was going to be good. I did not think they were going to be this good. They go out there. They're going to make the playoffs if they continue to play like this, and they're going to be a very dangerous team once they get there. And number 6 hits the Ravens. They have now lost 5 games. In those 5 games, they have lost by a grand total of 22 points. Justin Tucker has missed 22 points worth of kicks this season, all in the losses. They are even if Justin Tucker makes all his kicks like he's supposed to. And I'm not blaming this all on Justin Tucker, but there's a lot of games that you can say, hey, he should have made those and they would have won if he did. Now, I'm also not going to sit here and advocate to cut Justin Tucker. He's the greatest kicker in the history of the game of football. He's going to bounce back next season if they let him. If some other team picks him up, he's going to be a monster for them. You cannot cut Justin Tucker. And I understand name, brand value, whatever. It's a real thing in the NFL. When you have a guy like Justin Tucker, you can't let him go. You can't, even if he has a down season. There's been kickers that have had down seasons before. Chris Boswell, longtime kicker for the Steelers, had a down season a couple years ago. They kept him around. Now he's been the best kicker in the NFL this season, right? You have guys like Mason Crosby, going to go to the Hall of Fame. He had a couple of down seasons with the Green Bay Packers, turned it around, got right back, continued to kick for them for a little while longer. Right? This is not the end of the road for Justin Tucker. Just because he has one bad year doesn't mean they're done. As far as the rest of the Ravens, the defense has been playing a lot better of late, especially the secondary. They got burned by MVP candidate Saquon Barkley. Not much you can do about that. I'd like to see them rely on the run a little bit more, especially in a tight game. It's hard when you have your top when you're relying on guys like Nelson Aguilar, who continue to drop passes in his career. Maybe some Deontay Johnson. You traded for him. I know they're kind of iffy on if he's going to get in and play. I don't know what their plan is over there with him or why it doesn't work. But for whatever reason, the Baltimore Ravens, still a very good team. They just have some stuff they need to work on before they're truly contenders. Getting into the top 5, how about the Pittsburgh Steelers? How about Russell Wilson going off 400 yards, 4 touchdowns, keeping the Steelers alive, dropping 40 points on the Bengals' heads? Not something I expected the Steelers to be able to do. I thought the Bengals were just going to be able to outscore them, just because the Bengals' offense was that good. Their defense was undoubtedly going to give up points, but 40 is not a number I expected to be paired with the Pittsburgh Steelers. They had not really been capable of that kind of offensive explosion all season long, but now here they are. They get it done. Pick 6 on the first drive of the game, doesn't matter. They rebound. Russell Wilson plays great football. That is why they brought him in. This is why the Steelers are a top 5 team, and they are a dangerous team in the AFC. They're going to win that division, and they could be a Super Bowl team this year with the way that defense is playing. We'll see, though. At 4, we have the Kansas City Chiefs. They escape once again using their magic pixie dust, magic powers. They escape with a weird penalty fumble call. It happens. I thought that was a false start. Probably shouldn't have given them the fumble. Should have given it back to the Raiders there, 5 yards back. You never know what was going to happen, but the Kansas City Chiefs escape with a win. That's just kind of how it's been all season long. They keep on finding ways to win, and like I say, good teams find ways to win. The one question is, are their wheels going to fall off? Are they going to stop having their lucky breaks? I have no idea if or when that's going to happen, but that is something I'm very concerned about with this Kansas City Chiefs team. They're very good, though. That defense is incredible. They're at number 4. At number 3, the Buffalo Bills. They dominate in the snow. Josh Allen, the first quarterback in the history of the NFL to run, catch, and throw a touchdown. Just the 5th player in the history of the NFL to do that as well. Christian McCaffrey did it a couple years ago. That was the last time it happened, but the Buffalo Bills are amazing, right? They really are. They went out there and they decimated the 49ers. They controlled the game on the ground. They passed the ball when they needed to. They got everything they wanted and more out of this game. It was a great performance by Josh Allen, by the Bills. He's an MVP candidate. This is a dangerous Bills team. Excuse me. And more than any time really, I think in his career, this is probably the year to take out the Chiefs. Now, they've said that before. They said that last year. But the way that these two teams are playing, the Bills are just playing much better than the Chiefs are right now. And I think they are clearly. There's clearly a divide between 4 and 3 in the league right now. At 2, it's the Eagles. I really consider them putting up to 1 after a big win against the Baltimore Ravens on the road. That's a huge performance for them. It was a running back off Derrick Henry versus Saquon Barkley. Saquon Barkley comes up with a couple huge plays down the stretch, gets a rushing touchdown down there as well. This is a massive, massive year for the Eagles, massive year for Saquon Barkley. They continue to do their thing. Their defense has been phenomenal. Their defense has been world beaters ever since the bye week, and this is a juggernaut of a squad, arguably the best team in the NFL. But at number 1, it's the Detroit Lions. They escape with a win on Thanksgiving. Jared Goff doesn't have his greatest second half. They almost are held scoreless in the second half, but they dominate the first half. They really do. They go out there, they get a strong lead. I'd like to see a little bit more consistency out of them. There's a couple of times in these games where they're just not getting what they need out of their players for all 4 quarters. It doesn't matter. The defense stood tall when they needed to. You can blame the coaching staff of the Bears all you like, but the Lions did enough to get a win. They're still the best team in the NFL. But let me know what you think. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the NFL power rankings. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we turn our attention over to winners and losers from another wild week in the NFL. Week 13, come and gone. We'll talk about who had the best week, who had the worst week. Coming up next here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube. Absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today is Tuesday, December 17th. It's December 13th, December 3rd. I apologize. If you're just tuning in, we just finished going over the NFL Power Rankings. The NFL Power Rankings for Week 14 after a crazy Week 13, but we're going to go over Week 13 here. Winners and losers from another wild week in the NFL coming up in just a second. But before we do, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you are on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those two things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Tuesday, December 3rd. But like I was saying, we're going to start off our recap of the week, as always, with our winners and losers, top 5 winners this week. We got a bunch of players who had huge weeks, a bunch of players who really showed out. Starting at number 5, it's Jerry Jeudy on Monday Night Football. This is why we wait to do our winners and losers until Tuesday, because stuff like Monday Night Football can happen. A performance like Jerry Jeudy's, where he goes for 235 yards and a touchdown, the single best revenge game in the history of wide receivers in the NFL. The most yards against your team that you just came from in the history of the NFL. A massive performance for Jerry Jeudy in a revenge game, one that he was looking forward to. He taunted the crowd on. He moved from 30th in receiving yards in the league this season all the way up to 5th. That's how huge of a performance this was. Now, you can take a look at that and say that's how close 30 is to 5. 235 yards is generally 2-3 games worth of performances, right? Since Jameis Winston has come in, he has almost 15% of his entire career yardage. Just since Jameis Winston has taken over at quarterback, he has really taken a huge step up since Deshaun Watson went down. Jerry Jeudy is our 5th biggest winner of the week. He goes out there and dominates a game that he said he would against a really good defense and a really good cornerback in Pat Surtain. At number 4, the 4th biggest winner of the week, it's Saquon Barkley. It was looking like it was going to be a dud, the battle between Saquon Barkley and Derrick Henry, but the very last minute, when it mattered the most in the 4th quarter, Saquon Barkley breaks off huge run after huge run, gets into the end zone for a touchdown yet again. Saquon puts his name in the MVP ring. What a massive, massive performance for him. He's our 4th biggest winner because you can make the argument now that he has moved ahead of Lamar Jackson in the MVP ladder. Now, I'm not 100% sure if that's actually happened. I still think Josh Allen is the MVP right now, but a very close second is Saquon Barkley. The numbers he's been able to put up this season, he is on pace to break the all-time scrimmage yards and rushing yards record, and he is incredible at football. It's so much fun to watch a guy like that go to work, and you don't get to see it too often. Saquon Barkley is the 4th winner of the week. And number 3, we're going to go to a group of guys. Number 3 winner of the week are former bust quarterbacks, right? We talk about a guy like Bryce Young, who was thrown to the curb, who was benched earlier this season. People said he was done in the NFL. I'm not saying that I'm innocent of that. I thought he was done. He was playing atrociously. He couldn't get the ball out. He couldn't handle pressure. He was not able to throw the ball over the middle of the field that consistently. He wasn't moving out of the pocket like he was in college. He wasn't able to hit all the throws that he was in college. But now we take a look at what he's done. Ever since he's come back into the starting role, the Panthers not only have completely turned it around, but he has as well. He has earned a spot in the franchise quarterback room. He has earned a spot next year to be the starting quarterback for the Carolina Panthers, and he should have won that game for them. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Adam Thielen caught that ball. It was a touchdown. The Panthers should have won that game, and I cannot believe that that is the way it ended. Now, obviously, that was to go into the half, but still, an extra 4 points would have won you a game there, most likely. You never actually know how it goes. But outside of that, the other bust quarterback I want to talk about, guys like Sam Darnold, who continue to throw and play great football in a new home. Anthony Richardson, in his second year, just has a game-winning drive this week against the Patriots. These are guys that the league has chewed up, spit out, given up on, but they're playing great football right now. And I think they deserve their time in the spotlight. They are the 3rd winner of the week. Our number 2 winner, another MVP caliber performance, it's Josh Allen. It's not just for what he did on the field, but also what he did off the field. He got engaged this week, and then he became the first quarterback in NFL history to run, catch, and throw a touchdown in the snow, in a torrential snowstorm, a blizzard, if you will. He went out there and he won the game for the Buffalo Bills. Now, a lot of things went right for the Bills. The 49ers couldn't get anything going offensively, defensively, but what Josh Allen was able to do, that special play on the lateral that him and Amari Cooper connected on, that was one of the more exciting plays in all of the NFL this season. That was a massive play, a massive moment for Buffalo, a massive moment for Josh Allen, and I cannot wait to see what happens the rest of the year. He is my MVP right now. It's really getting close, though, with Saquon Barkley right behind him, but he continues to play great football when they need him to, and they're got a real shot at getting that bye in the AFC. And at number one, our number one winner of the week, it's Russell Wilson. I mean, how could you give it to anybody else? He goes for 400 yards, a resurgent game, his first real incredible game since leaving the Seahawks. He goes and drops 40 points on, yes, a bad Bengals team, but he rebounds. His first drive ended in a pick six. Probably could have been a pass interference on that, but they didn't call it. It ended up being a pick six. And instead of going back and trying to, fix his mistake by being too aggressive, he dinks and dunks. He does what he needs to, hits a couple of big plays, and he wins the game, drops 40 points on a bad Bengals defense. But Russell Wilson, over 400 yards, over 4 touchdowns, 1 interception. He does what he has not been able to do since leaving Seattle and puts together his best performance. I'm curious to see what the future is for him. He's on that 1-year minimum deal. I'm curious to see if Pittsburgh re-signs him, what his market is like in the future. He's got a lot of option after what he's done this week and the rest of the season, but Russell Wilson is the biggest winner of the week. Jerry Jeudy, Saquon Barkley, bust QBs, Josh Allen, and Russell Wilson, all winners this week. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we turn our attention to the other side of the coin, the losers. 5 winners, there has to be 5 losers here. We're going to talk about those coming up next here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today is Tuesday, December 3rd. If you are just tuning in, we just went over the winners from Week 13 in the NFL. In this segment, we turn our attention over to the loser side of the coin here. We got 5 of those coming up next, but in just a second. But before we do, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you are on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those 2 things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Tuesday, December 3rd. But like I was saying, in this segment, we are going to get into our losers here on the other side of the coin. 5 winners, 5 losers. At number 5, we have those Miami Dolphins. They went into this weekend, trying to prove that they can play in the cold, trying to prove that, it's just a narrative. It's not true. They looked cold out there. They really did. They looked uncomfortable. They looked cold. They brought so much heating equipment with them. It did not matter. Tua could not get the ball to the places he needed to get it to all game long. He was inaccurate. The rest of the Dolphins team had some trouble with drops. It just was not the way that it needed to go. They missed some tackles. It was cold for them. No, it was cold outside. There's no doubt about that. But the Dolphins needed to go and prove a narrative wrong, and they could not do that. The Dolphins go in and reinforce what everyone's been saying about them. They're now 0-8 in games where it's below freezing. And when Tua's at the helm, it's an issue. They need to figure it out by the time playoffs come around, because they're not going to be hosting. They're going to be going most likely somewhere cold. It's not super warm like it is in Florida everywhere. They need to figure it out. I don't know how they're going to do that. I don't know where they're going to go. I don't even know if they're going to make the playoffs. That was a brutal, brutal loss for them. They lose a lot of ground in the AFC playoff race. They're a big loser this week. They're at number 5. At number 4, our 4th biggest loser of the week, it's Justin Tucker. How about him? He came into the year as the most accurate kicker in the NFL. He no longer holds that title. He's still one of the best kickers in the history of the NFL, but as we talked about when we talked about the Ravens in our power ranking segment, they have lost all 5 of their games by a grand total of 22 points. In those games, in all 5 of those games, Justin Tucker has missed a total of 22 points. So they would be even in their 5 losses if he had made all of his kicks. Now, that's a big if. Still sucks, because this is a Ravens team that you can look at and objectively say, this is a good Ravens squad. They have Lamar Jackson playing like an MVP candidate. Derrick Henry playing like an Offensive Player of the Year candidate. You have a defense that's really started to step up, especially as of late these last few weeks. This is a Ravens team that is playing some of the best football of Lamar Jackson's career. And yet they're losing more games than they have in a long time. And that's because they don't have what they usually can rely on in Justin Tucker. There are a lot of issues with this team. There are a lot of issues with the way that it is going, and I just don't see a way that Justin Tucker doesn't lose them a game. He's been one of the worst kickers in all of football right now. They need to figure it out. I don't think they can cut him. I think that would be a huge mistake. But they need to figure out something. They need to figure out what's wrong with him, because they're running out of time. It's going to cost them big in some big games going forward. Our number 3 loser, though, it's the Bengals. I mean, look what you're doing to poor Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow goes out there. He does everything you need him to do. Joe Burrow plays incredible football. He goes for another massive game. He's putting up MVP numbers. And you lose. Once again, the offense puts up 38 points. The second time that's happened in a loss this season. They put up 33 plus points in 6 games this season. They've lost 4 of them. We went over this stat. We can keep going back. They're putting up enough points that they should be winning by all historical precedents, and they are not winning. It is awful. It is disgusting. That defense needs to play any sort of defense at all. The defensive coordinator needs to be fired. They need to figure something out, because they cannot go into next season like this. They have eliminated themselves from what could have been a very special Joe Burrow year. It's just not happening. And that offense is not going to be as explosive next season. They won't have T. Higgins most likely. They still need to get Jamar Chase a contract. He's going to be more expensive now. This is just not working out the way that the Bengals hoped it would at the beginning of the offseason. Everything is going wrong for them right now, and they are about to implode very fast. They need to get a good draft, and they need to figure their stuff out on defense right now. Bengals are the number 3 loser. Our number 2 loser is the Falcons, and Kirk Cousins more specifically. There's a real chance Kirk Cousins gets benched, and I would not be angry about it. This is a Falcons team that is falling and falling quickly. They had a huge lead in the division after taking the second of 2 games from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They get blown out by the Broncos. Then they lose this week to the Chargers. It has just not been their year. Every time they seemingly went in this year, right? They went all in. They got the big pass rusher. They got some pressure this week. The defense finally played good for the first time. But every time the defense finds a way to play good football, the offense falls flat on its face. It happened week 1. It's happened now in week 13. Every other week, the defense has not really played great football, and the offense has been pretty solid. Sometimes it's both that suck, but there has yet to be a game this season where both of them play consistently good. It has not happened. They need it to happen. They need to turn it on right now. I don't know what's going on with the Falcons, but they cannot play together as a team. It's like they focus on one side of the ball in practice, and the other side is like, you did fine last week. You'll be okay. It doesn't work that way, and I'm sure that's not what they're doing, but it's just a really, really dangerous way to play football, and you're seeing them really fall apart for it. The Falcons at number 2 for the biggest losers. And the biggest loser of the week, it's the San Francisco 49ers. There's not really another way to put it. They not only got absolutely thumped on the road in Buffalo in a snow game, a game that they desperately needed to win to keep their playoffs hopes alive. They're still in it, technically, but it's a lot harder to get in now, especially after the Seahawks got a win this week as well. They could not get anything going offensively, and more than that, they lose not just one, but their 2 starting running backs. Christian McCaffrey, who they finally got back, goes down yet again. Jordan Mason goes down. They're down to Isaac Guerrero. Fred Warner's been playing through a broken ankle all year long. He's not playing his best. This is a team that just has everything going wrong for them right now. Brock Purdy not playing his best football. The wide receiver core is decimated. Debo has seemingly fallen off the face of the earth. I don't know what they're doing. They're not getting him the ball. I'd like to see him get a couple more running back snaps, especially now with both of those running backs gone. Get him some more touches. He's a guy that can be dynamic for this team. They're just not using him very well. I'm not sure exactly what's going on, but this is a 49ers team that is falling apart at the seams right now. They're very expensive. This was kind of their last real year as a cheap kind of team, I would say. They're a very expensive team, but they're not paying a quarterback. You're going to have to pay Brock Purdy soon, and that's going to make this window almost impossible to stay open for much longer. Not sure how they're going to do it, but they need to figure it out now. They're the biggest loser of the week. The Dolphins. Justin Tucker, the Bengals, the Falcons, and the Niners, the 5 biggest losers of the week. Let me know what you think. I'd love to hear your thoughts on winners and losers, but we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we finish up our show with some fantasy football advice. We get to the final week of the regular season for a lot of leagues, maybe this week, maybe next week, but it's a very important game. We have a couple of guys you should target on the fantasy football waiver wire. All of these guys have less than 60% ownership on most leagues. We'll take a look at who they are, who you should target, coming up next here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today is Tuesday, December 3rd. If you were just tuning in, we just finished going over the winners and losers from another wild week of NFL football. In this segment, we help you out with fantasy football just a little bit. Some waiver wire acquisitions on a Tuesday as we head into the playoffs right around the corner. A big week for you, 6 teams on bye. We'll talk about a way to avoid them, who you should target, at least one at each of the major positions. But before we get into that, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you are on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those two things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you could talk about, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around. talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Tuesday, December 3rd. But like I was saying, we are going to finish off our show here with some fantasy football waiver targets. Big week for fantasy football. Some guys you might think about targeting. And we're going to start off at the quarterback position. Starting off, we look up matchups, right? If you're looking to stream a quarterback in case you had your main quarterback on bye, with 6 teams on bye this week, it could be a bit of an issue. Will Levis is a guy that I'm targeting. You take a look at his last couple of games. He's had multiple touchdowns in 3 of his last 4, only thrown an interception in half of them, and gone over 220 yards in 3 of those 4 as well. He's been getting around 20 points, 22 points in most standard scoring ESPN quarterback leagues. This is a guy that I'm looking at against the Jaguars, a Jaguars defense who has been one of the worst in all of football against the pass. That secondary is awful. This is a guy that if you need a quarterback, an emergency quarterback, that's someone I would turn to. Some leagues might have a guy like Tua available. He might be a little bit safer. But if you're looking for a boom or bust candidate, that's someone that I'm looking at. As for who he's throwing to, the wide receiver side of things, someone that has been hotter than just about anybody else on the entire NFL on the same team as Will Levis, Nick Westbrook-Ikhine, 8 touchdowns this season. That's about 5th in the NFL right now. He only has 20 catches. 8 of those have gone for touchdown. Will Levis has fed that man for touchdowns for the last couple of weeks. He has gone off consistently. This is a guy that I would really love to target. He's getting a lot of love recently, but especially against the Jaguars. If you need a wide receiver, that's someone that I might pick up. He's going to be a risky touchdown dependent guy, but if you want a risk factor that could go for about 20 points, Nick Westbrook-Ikhine is your guy. Sticking with that wide receiver position, a guy like Parker Washington on the Jacksonville Jaguars. Sticking with that matchups, the Titans still not the best, and I know you might have to contend with a Mac Jones quarterback room, but Parker Washington over his last couple games has been pretty solid as far as targets go, right? Last week, 6 catches on 12 targets, got into the end zone and added 100 yards. That's his real breakout game. You also had a game a couple weeks ago against Philadelphia where he had 6 targets in the slump that Brian Thomas has kind of been in. He's been the clear wide receiver too. It's a little risky to trust that Jacksonville offense, but if you're really, really desperate for wide receivers, this is a guy that I might look at as like a wide receiver 3-4 kind of play. And finally, the last wide receiver that I'm looking at, Brandon Cooks. He comes back this week from injury. He shows up, catches a touchdown in his first game back. We saw them kind of be hesitant to use CeeDee Lamb down the stretch of that game, whether that be because of injury or because he was dropping passes. CeeDee Lamb didn't really get in the game. Brandon Cooks is going to be that number 1 receiver. He finishes with 7 targets. They're not really great for average depths. He only finishes with 3 catches for 16 yards and a touchdown, but against a really bad Cincinnati Bengals defense, you saw what the Pittsburgh Steelers did. Brandon Cooks could be a guy that is worth targeting. Outside of the wide receiver positions, there are a couple running backs that you want to touch. Obviously, Isaac Guerendo. With the other 2 49er running backs going down, he's going to be the head of that backfield. We've seen him go off a couple big rushes. He scored a touchdown last week. He scored a long touchdown earlier in the year when Jordan Mason went down. He's had a couple of big games in relief for the Niners already. There's a couple of other Niners running backs you could pick up. They just signed Israel Abanikanda, the 2nd round undrafted player. They also have a couple guys on their practice squad. Patrick Taylor Jr. might get a shot. Keyshawn Vaughn might get a shot. I'd go target most likely Guerendo. If you want to take a shot on one of those other 3, probably Israel Abanikanda, but I think it's going to be mostly Guerendo's backfield. That's going to be the most sought-after name on the waiver wire. I'm not showing anybody anything new there. Outside of him and the running backs, there are a couple of guys that I would be actually very interested in. If Jerome Ford is available in your league, which not sure if he will be, there's a real chance that Jerome Ford has been held up as a handcuff, to Nick Chubb because Nick Chubb started the season so late, but he is available in 70% of ESPN leagues. So you take a look at a guy like that. If he's available, I'd go pick him up. You saw the usage that they got out of him in that game against the Broncos. Nick Chubb basically didn't play an entire half. It was mostly Jerome Ford. Not sure if that is sustainable, but it's a lot of touches for a guy. Even when Nick Chubb is playing his normal workload, he has gotten in, been the passing down situation guy. That's someone that you might want to stash for later. And finally, the final running back that I will point out here, Blake Corum. He had a third of the snaps last week, and you might think in that Rams backfield, Kyren Williams is the guy. And he is. There's no doubt about it. Kyren Williams is the guy. He went for over 100 and a touchdown last week, but Blake Corum had a couple of drives there. He had 8 touches, went for 50 yards. He had a solid day, and he had a third of the snaps. That's not nothing. I'm not sure if he's a guy that I want to thrust into starting lineups, but if he's available, he's a guy that I'm targeting in a lot of leagues, especially if you're weak at running back and you think you might be able to, and he's a guy that I think might be able to come on strong in the playoffs. We will see, though. But finally, the tight end. The tight end position is a little bit harder to guess. There's always going to be one or two of those guys that go off, but someone that I am targeting a lot, it's Noah Gray. Noah Gray, the Kansas City tight end, backup to Travis Kelce. He's only rostered in 7% of ESPN leagues. He's a guy who's caught 4 touchdowns in his last 3 weeks. He's gotten more and more targets as the season has gone on. In his last couple of games, 6 targets, 4 targets, 5 targets, 4 touchdowns. 58 yards, 66 yards, 23 yards. This is a guy that has gotten 4 receptions in 3 straight games. He is continuing to get solid work. He's getting about a 66% snap share out there, so he's out there on the field a good amount. This is a guy that if you need a tight end to fill in against the Chargers, who, they've been fine against tight ends. They let Mark Andrews get into the end zone 2 weeks ago on Monday Night Football, but this is a guy that I think would be absolutely worth picking up. That's just my opinion there. But let me know what you think. Who are you targeting in fantasy football? Who's your biggest target? How much are you spending on him? I'd love to hear your thoughts. And thank you, everybody, so much for tuning in to today's episode of Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I have been your host, Jeremy Lapidus. We will be back tomorrow, same time, same place, talking about all things college football. The new college football playoff poll comes out. We have NBA power rankings tomorrow, as well as everything else that comes out from around the world of sports. I'll see you then. You all have a good one. Bye-bye.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't